Welcome all. We're going to get started in about a minute or two. And while you're waiting, we just ask that you tell us a little bit about who you are. Ask that you share your name of the organization you represent, and whether you're a past or present American History and Civics grant recipient. And like I said, we'll give it a couple more minutes to let some more folks jump in, and then we will get started promptly at 2 o'clock. And Joshua, why don't we move to the next slide? Perfect, thank you. And for those of you that just joined, we will be getting started in a moment or two. Just ask that if you would take a moment to let us know who you are, and just go ahead and share your name, the name of the organization you represent, and whether or not you're a past or present American History and Civics grant recipient in the chat. Thanks so much. We're going to go ahead and get started in about 30 seconds. Thank you all for letting us know who you are. Hey, welcome all. We got a great turnout today. Happy to see you all here. And we're going to go ahead and get started. And as I'm getting started and kicking us off, I just ask that you share your name of your organization, and whether or not you're a past or present AHC grant recipient in the chat if you haven't already. All right. My name is Orman Ferez. I want to welcome you all to this webinar this afternoon, where we're going to discuss the FY2025 American History and Civics National Activities Seminars Discretionary Grant Competition. And so we've got a lot of really great information to share and walk through today. And so we just are really, really excited that you're all here with us. This webinar is being recorded. Just a couple of really quick updates. The participant lines will be muted throughout this presentation. We are, because we're going to have a Q&A session later on, this afternoon, we are going to leave you all with the ability to control your own mute, but we're going to ask you to mute yourselves throughout the presentation. If we hear background noise, there's always someone who we have to mute. We will mute you from our end, but we just ask that you make sure that your lines are muted throughout the presentation, just to avoid any background noise or disturbance during the presentation today. And as I mentioned before in the chat, we just ask that you share your name, the name of your organization that you're representing, and whether or not you're a past or present American History and Civics grant recipient. All right. Next slide, please. Right. So my name is Orman Ferez, and I am the group leader that oversees the American History and Civics grant programs here at the U.S. Department of Education. Again, really, really happy to have you all here with us today. You're going to mostly hear from me today, but I do also want to take a moment to introduce you to the exceptional team who works to manage the American History and Civics grants under this program. And so I'll read each individual's name, and they will just do a quick hello and a wave to let you know who they are. So first, I'm going to introduce Dr. Joshua Batchelor, one of our program officers. All right. And Donna DeFino, also a program officer. All right. Dr. Michelle Kennedy and Nikki Palmore. All right, thank you, team. And so you'll actually be hearing from members of the team today. They'll actually be responding to comments and questions in the chat throughout this webinar today. So if you do have a question, please do feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll be doing our best to respond in real time, and then we'll also plan to reserve some time at the end for questions and answers as well. And so you'll have an opportunity to do that also. All right. And all right. So now we're going to go ahead and get started. And so to kick us off, it's my pleasure to invite Benicia Richardson, who is the director of the Effective Educator Development Division, to provide some welcome remarks and an overview of the competition as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramon. I am super excited to be here. We're finally here, and we are really, really excited to get this competition on the way and hopefully find new partners in all of you that have joined us today. Before I get started with opening remarks, I just want to thank once again the team behind the work that you are going to venture into with us starting today, hopefully, and continue on as we make awards down the line. There are a group of phenomenal folks who are really dedicated and committed to the mission of educating our nation's populace and supporting educators around the country. So big shout out to my team before I get started. Thank you. Really excited. Like I said, this new program is a key component of our celebration of Americans' 250th. It aligns directly with the Trump administration's ongoing commitment to fostering patriotism, civic responsibility, and a deeper understanding of our shared history across the United States, and definitely the efforts we're making at bringing this learning to our K-12 environment. As we approach this significant anniversary, it is vital that we engage students and educators alike in discussions about our founding principles, our values, and the critical role they will continue to play in shaping the next 250 years. Through this program, the department seeks to support seminars that provide teachers with the tools and resources they need to inspire the next generation with a robust and informed understanding of American history, civics, and the principles upon which our country was founded. The American History Civics Seminars for the Semi-Quincentennial Grant Program is an exciting new opportunity for us to pioneer and be front and center with the work that we know is churning and shaping the American landscape. We look forward to partnering with you through this new program, this new opportunities, this new learning as we move forward over the next, I hate to say 30 days of the competition period and beyond. We are excited and hope that you guys meet successes, enhance your practices, sharpen your resources and your tools as you think about what your proposal and your grant projects can and will be. We look forward to working with you as we make grant awards over the next few months, and welcome and good luck. Thank you, Ramon. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Benicia. All right, so let me just walk through the agenda and what you will all be experiencing this afternoon. And so we will start off with a competition overview. We'll take a little bit of a look at the application parts and structure so you have familiarity with what to expect when you start working on the application. We will talk a little bit about the selection criteria for the competition, a little bit about the program specific priorities and requirements. We'll talk a little bit about the program performance reporting requirements for the American History and Civics Seminars program. We'll have an opportunity for Q&A, and then we will follow up before closing out with competition resources and reminders. All right. So first, a quick note about the webinar slides. First of all, after this webinar, we will provide a copy of the slides on the American History and Civics Seminars webpage that most of you have probably seen thus far. And then that'll be available for you to download and review at your convenience. Please note that these slides are really only to be used as a guidance document. We really do want you to refer to the official notice inviting applications for the complete text of absolute priorities, selection criteria, competitive preference priorities, et cetera. They do provide the full accounting of what is required and provided under this grant. Okay, next slide, please. All right. Um, and so a little bit about the program purpose and authority. And so this grant program is authorized under Part B, Subpart 3, Section 2233 of the Every Student Succeeds Act. I'm sorry, Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And the purpose of the grant really is to promote new and existing evidence-based strategies to encourage innovative American history, civics, and government and geography instruction. So the sort of second purpose of this also is to support seminars, as Venetia indicated, for educators or students in honor the 250th anniversary of America's founding. And so the program length you can see on the screen is up to 36 months, and so you will be applying for grants that will last for up to a 36-month period. Next slide, please. A little bit here about the timeline. And so this NIA was published in the Federal Register on June 23rd, 2025. And so I know there's a couple of different dates that have been out there for the sort of deadline to submit an intent to apply. And there's a date of July 2nd, which is Wednesday. There's also a date of July 8th that's published in the NIA and a lot of other places. The correct date is July 8th. 2025. And so I know many of you have already sent your notices of intent to apply. If you're still pondering whether or not this is an opportunity that's for you and need a little bit of additional time to provide that notification, you do have until July 8th, and we apologize for that inconvenience. I think the only place that you will find that date of July 2nd is in the instructions handbook, but we wanted to make sure that we got on top of getting you the appropriate date, which is July 6th, giving you an extra 6 days. Applications are due July 23rd, 2025. And then we expect that that awards will be made and announced by September 30th, 2025 at the latest, which is the end of the current fiscal year. And so we estimate that approximately $14.2 million will be available to make awards. We're expecting that we'll make about 7 to 10 new awards with those funds. And the range of the range of awards can vary. There is a ceiling, a cap of $1 million, but generally applications are submitted with budgets that are somewhere in the area of $500,000 to $1 million per project. And as I mentioned before, that project period is up to 36 months. Next slide, please. All right, so eligible entities. You are eligible for this grant if you are an institution of higher education, if you represent a nonprofit organization, or if you represent a for-profit organization, okay? And with those three sort of entity types, there is a certain expertise that the organization will have to demonstrate. And so applicants will be required to demonstrate that they have expertise in the development of evidence-based approaches with the potential to improve the quality of American history, civics and government, or geography learning and teaching. Okay, and so we'll talk a little bit later about what that actually looks like in practice. But please do note that institutions of education, nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations are all considered eligible entity types, but that there is a component where they will have to demonstrate their expertise in those areas. We often get the question, are group applications allowed? And the answer to that question is yes. And in the NIA, you will find very specific procedures for what that will look like, and a reference to where you can get even more information about that in 34 CFR 75.127 through 129, which outlines the specific procedures for how an applicant can submit a group application. And so the question is often asked as well, are LEAs eligible to apply? And so LEAs are not eligible to apply as the lead applicant on either, any of the American History and Civics programs that we run, including this one, which is specific to the seminars concentration. However, eligible entities can partner with LEAs, and that acronym I just saw something pop up in the chat. It means local education agencies. So a local education agency such as a school district or a charter school district, et cetera. All right. All right. So documenting demonstrated experience, which you just mentioned in the previous slide. And so, as I noted before, applicants are required to demonstrate that they have expertise in the areas of, improving the quality of American history, civics and government, or geography learning and teaching. And so, applicants are required to demonstrate that expertise. And below we have a couple of different, below on the slide, I should say, there are a couple of different ways that you can provide that information. And so you will provide documentation using the Appendix B of the other attachments form. And here's a couple of things that you can utilize in order to demonstrate that expertise. One would be a copy of the applicant's mission statement, showing obviously that the organization, has a focus, mission focus on that specific one of those areas, whether it's American history, civics, government, or geography. You can provide samples of current or previous work completed by the applicant, right? You can also provide samples of the applicant's work developing evidence-based approaches to teaching and learning in those subject areas. You can provide project staff resumes that support, strong background or experience in those areas. And then you can also provide sample artifacts that, created by your organizations, that basically demonstrate the support of history and civics expertise. All right, so let's dive a little bit into the application parts. And so the application is essentially comprised of 5 major parts, okay? Part 1 is the Ed standard forms, and there's a list of them that I'll walk through on the next slide. Part 2 is the Ed abstract narrative. Part 3 is the project narrative. Part 4 is the EED, Effective Educator Development Applicant Budget Worksheet. And then part 5 is the other attachments form that I just alluded to in the previous slide. Can you go back, Joshua? Sorry. And so applications, we're really strongly recommending applicants to ensure that their applications are organized as described in the application instructions. Not a hard requirement, but it's just beneficial for the peer reviewers and the peer review process that we'll talk about a little bit later when the applications are arranged and organized in this way. All right, next slide, please. And so I mentioned before the Ed standard forms, and there's essentially 7 standard forms that you will find in the application package. The first is the SF-424, which is the application for federal assistance. You'll also find the Department of Education supplemental information form. You'll find the Department of Education budget summary form, which provides a breakdown of the U.S. Department of Education funds that are going to be used to support the project. The SF-LLL, which is the disclosure of lobbying activities. There's the General Education Provisions Act, GEPA requirements, Section 427. And then finally, there are 2 additional forms, one of which is the assurances of construction programs. And then there's the grants.gov lobbying form. And so each of these 7 forms you'll find in part 1 of the application on grants.gov, and each of these will need to be completed in order to for the application to be considered eligible for review. Next slide, please. And so part 2, as I mentioned before, is the Ed Abstract Narrative Form. And so with the abstract, essentially what we're asking applicants to do is to provide a 1-page summary that describes, in a nutshell, the pertinent information about their project. And there's some prompts below that I will walk through with you. But ultimately, as I mentioned before, it's a 1-page description or summary of the project, limited to 2,000 characters. Okay. And it should really include, obviously, the name and eligibility classification of each applicant, okay, whether it's a nonprofit organization or a for-profit or institution of higher education. There should be a list of the names of all participating local education agencies and state agencies, or nonprofits or for-profits, essentially all of the partners, that are going to be sort of coming together to make sure that this work is successful. It should indicate if the application is from a single eligible applicant or if it's a partnership application or a group application, and really should identify the applicant's eligibility classification as we described above. It should describe the reach of the proposed project by indicating the total number of schools, teachers, principals, students who will be directly affected by and impacted by the work. Of the folks that are participating in the project. It should also provide a summary statement of the project objectives and activities. And then finally, it should also include an identification of the competitive preference priorities for which the applicant is applying. So if the applicant is applying for the competitive preference priority, it should indicate in the abstract that they are applying for that priority. And if they're not, it is also helpful to us to have an indication as well. Next slide, please. Part 3 is sort of the meat of the application. Part 3 is really the application narrative, project narrative form. And this is really where the applicant is going to provide an in-depth description of their approach to addressing the absolute priority and also the competitive preference priority if chosen or selected. And so here, a couple of quick notes. Want to make sure that the table of contents is no more than 1 double-spaced page, okay? But it should include a table of contents, something that sometimes is left out of the application. And particularly for application review, having the table of contents is immensely helpful for reviewers so that they can quickly move through the application and cross-reference information that's needed for them to make an accurate assessment of where things are in your application. There should also be a response to absolute priorities. There should be a response to selection criteria. And then, of course, there should be a response to any additional project or program requirements that are found in the NIA. Really, really helpful for applicants to provide clear headings, as I mentioned before with the table of contents. Really helpful to have clear headings to help department staff and peer reviewers match the narrative with the selection criteria, also with the priorities that are being addressed as well. And so applicants are encouraged, but not required, to limit the narrative to 40 pages, okay? And ultimately, it's not a hard requirement again, but again, just really eases the review of the application when those 40 pages are adhered, when that 40-page limit is adhered to. All right, let's go on to the next slide, please. All right, 1 second. All right. Sorry, I'm getting all the questions and answers are flooding my screen, so I'm having a little bit of trouble seeing. All right, part 4. EED applicant budget worksheet. And so this is maybe a little bit different for those of you that have applied to different applications or different grant competitions at the department. This is a budget worksheet, a form that is exclusive to grants that fall under the Effective Educator Development Division. And so this form has 5 sections, okay? And each of these sections has a different purpose. So I'm going to walk you through what those sections are briefly, and then I'm going to let you know which sections are not required because there are 2 of the 5 sections that are not required for this program. Section A of the EED applicant budget worksheet is the federal funding summary, and so for this section, applicants are going to be providing information on the amount of federal funds that are requested across multiple budget categories such as personnel, fringe, travel, supplies, equipment, training stipends, things like that. Basically, letting the Department of Education know exactly the total amount of funds that are needed in order to administer this project and where those funds will fit. Section B is a non-federal funding summary. And because this program does not have a matching funds requirement, applicants are not required to submit this section. Okay. Same goes for Section C, which is the sources of non-federal funding, essentially the sources of matching funds, non-federal matching funds. And again, because there is no matching funds requirement, applicants are not required to complete this section. Section D is the itemized budget breakdown. Okay. And the itemized budget breakdown is where applicants are going to provide us with a detailed itemized breakdown of the amounts that are requested under each budget category. So in Section A, applicants are providing a really high level budget summary. For year 1, I need $50,000 or $100,000 in personnel, and I need $25,000 in fringe, and I need X amount of dollars throughout the other budget categories. In Section D, applicants are going to provide the detail for each of those high level budget categories. And in Section E, applicants are going to provide us with the narrative justification that explains not just the what those funds are going to be used for, but also the why behind that, right? So I need the funds for this, and this is why I need them. All right. I saw a question: is there a limit in Section E? And maybe I shouldn't have spoken out on that one because I'm going to have to ask. So actually, what I'll do is I will ask the person who asked that question to elaborate what they mean by a limit in the chat, and then we'll get back to that with a response. All right. So this slide here really is just something that we like to just make sure that everyone is aware of in these meetings. When you're preparing for, submission of completion and submission of a grant application, we always want you to pay attention to the federal cost principles when you're planning your budget. And so our staff are trained to identify costs that are allowable, allocable, and reasonable. Okay. And we train our peer reviewers so that when they're reviewing applications, they are looking for costs that are allowable, allocable, and reasonable. And when I say allowable, these are for costs that are actually permitted under the grant program's statute, okay, or OMB circulars. Allocable expenditures are those things that are specifically able to be purchased or expended for operation of the proposed project as it is designed, right? So they may be things that are allowable, but they would be outside the scope of what was intended for that specific grant application. And then finally, reasonable just means that the cost for an expense is comparable to market prices. So, the project director, if project directors on similar projects, earn $150,000 for a project, the salary for the project director for this grant shouldn't be $500,000, right? That would be considered unreasonable. So allocable, allowable, and reasonable. We want to make sure that you're paying attention to ensure that your costs that are outlined in your budget form meet those three standards. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. All right. And then part five is the other attachment form. Okay. And so there are a number of different items that we would expect to see in any application. One would be a logic model that should be submitted under Appendix A. Um, Appendix B, we talked about a little bit before. That's where applicants are going to provide documentation that, that the applicant demonstrates expertise in the development of evidence-based approaches, in American history and civics, government, geography, learning, and teaching. Appendix C is where resumes of key personnel should be provided. Appendix D should include current approved indirect cost rate agreement. Appendix E should show letters of support, MOUs from partners, if applicable. Okay, if not applicable, then nothing should be provided there. Appendix F is proprietary information. If there's any information that should not be shared, should not be published, applicants should post that information there in their application. And then Appendix G is sort of a catch-all. If there are other things that an applicant feels like would be valuable or useful to have in the application, then we would want to see that information there. And then finally, Appendix H is the optional American history and civics applicant checklist. And that information, I believe, is posted on the American history and civics webpage. All right. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about application submission. All right. So we kind of talked about what the application looks like, how it's composed. And so all applications must be submitted electronically in grants.gov. Okay. Cannot stress this second item enough. Applicants must be submitted by no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on July 23rd, 2025. Applications must be fully uploaded and submitted with the date and timestamp by the grants.gov system by that deadline. I kid you not, we have received applications that were 12 seconds late, 12 a.m. and 12 seconds. And we were not able to accept those applications. So I just, could not implore you enough to make sure that you are, ready to submit your application. I tell applicants all the time, prospective applicants, don't wait until July 23rd, submit it on July 22nd. Make that your target, if at all possible. Try to get it in at least a day early and anticipate that there may be some kind of an issue with G5, grants.gov. Not that the system is problematic or gives issues, but just anticipate that something could go wrong and you might need that extra 24 hours to get it in. Late applications, as I mentioned before, will not be accepted. And so again, make sure that the application is in prior to that deadline. Let's go to the next slide, please. Couple of submission tips. Number one, I told you we cannot stress it enough. The first item there is start early and submit early. Okay, every year there's an applicant who submits the application or has some kind of an issue on the last day, and they're unable to submit their application in time. That happens every year. There are always late applications, and often those issues can be mitigated by just starting early, in the process and planning to submit early. Pay attention to formatting requirements that are outlined in the common instructions for submitting applications for federal assistance. You should have a link to that information in the NIA itself, and so you can get a sense of exactly how the application should be prepared and submitted and formatted. And then finally, again, just make sure that when you do submit your application, that you actually get a validation email from grants.gov. And so that's important. Without that, you don't necessarily have confirmation that the application actually has been submitted. And again, that's something that has happened. We've had lots of instances in the past where an applicant told us that they submitted their application, but because there was no validation email, it was a signal that grants.gov had not actually received their submission, and so unfortunately they were not able to be included in the competition. So make sure that you get that validation email from grants.gov. Don't wait until 11:50 p.m. on the 23rd, because if you don't get that validation email, you may not have time to resubmit your application. So just want to, share those tips and tidbits with you. If you need help with grants.gov, you can email support@grants.gov, or you can call them toll free at 1-800-518-4726. They'll be available to, answer any questions, that you have, or questions regarding submission of your application package. And then, of course, also, if you do call, you'll get a grants.gov help desk case number. You want to make sure that you keep track of any progress, on that issue, to make sure that it gets resolved. And like I said, start early, submit early. If you have questions or you have an issue related to grants.gov, don't leave that issue until the end, because sometimes it could take a little bit of time to make sure that to get that issue resolved. So as soon as you have an issue, any kind of issue that you have with grants.gov, make sure you reach out to the team as quickly as possible to make sure that your issue is resolved in time for you to be able to. If you could just go back, Joshua, really quickly, just to make sure that you have time to get that issue resolved in time to submit the application on time. All right, next slide, please. All right, so we're going to take a few moments to walk through the selection criteria. And so we'll just kind of talk a little bit at a high level, and then I'll kind of take a moment or two to just walk through the selection criteria individually. And so first of all, applicants for the American History and Civics Seminars competition absolutely should be considering these selection criteria when drafting their applications. And so just to give you a little bit of insider information, the peer reviewers that will be reviewing these applications will be walking through selection criterion by selection criterion, sub-factor by sub-factor, to ensure that they are finding where those criteria and sub-factors are addressed in the application. And so really, really important for prospective applicants to ensure that they are clearly labeling and demonstrating in the application where they are addressing the selection criteria. The maximum total score for the selection criteria is 100 points. Okay. As I mentioned before, peer reviewers will review each application. Those peer reviewers are non-federal personnel, right? So they are not individuals who are employed by the federal government. We do reach out to subject matter experts in the field to review applications against the selection criteria and the competitive preference points. The points or weights assigned to each criterion are indicated in parentheses, so you'll see that. In some cases, you'll see where a selection criterion is worth 30 points, and in others, one might be worth 20 points. So you'll see how much, what the maximum value of selection criterion is by just looking at the numbers in parentheses there. And then, of course, we want you to be sure to read the full text of the selection criteria in the NIA. All right, next slide, please. All right. So there are 4 selection criteria. The first one is quality of the project design, and this one is worth 30 points. And so the 30 points is essentially comprised of 3 what we call sub-factors at the Department of Education, or sub-criteria. And so the first is the extent to which the proposed project demonstrates a rationale that's aligned with the purposes of the grant program. Okay. And so that's worth 10 points. And And you'll see if you take a look at the definition section in the NIA, it sort of speaks to what demonstrates a rationale means, and essentially what we're looking for there is the alignment with a conceptual framework or a logic model that really sort of speaks to the kind of fundamental structure behind the grant project, the proposed project. The second subfactor here is the likely benefit to the intended recipients, okay, as indicated by the logic model or other conceptual framework of the services to be provided. Again, worth 10 points. And then the third is the extent to which the services to be provided by the proposed project reflect up-to-date knowledge and an evidence-based project component. 10 points again, and these are pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. Let's go to the next one, please. All right, and so the second selection criterion is significance, and it's worth 20 points. And there are two subfactors here, each of which is worth 10 points. The first is the importance or magnitude of the results or outcomes likely to be attained by the proposed project, especially contributions toward improving teaching practice and student learning and achievement. Okay? And then the second is the likelihood that the services to be provided by the proposed project will lead to meaningful improvements in the achievement of students as measured against rigorous and relevant standards. Okay, and so again, the extent to which an applicant receives 20 points is going to be based on the extent to which they address these two selection criteria. These two subfactors. Let's go on to the next one, please. Selection criterion C is quality of the management plan, also worth 20 points. And again, this one has two subfactors, each of which is worth 10 points. And so the first under quality of the management plan is the extent to which the goals, objectives, and outcomes to be achieved by the proposed project are clearly specified, measurable, and ambitious, yet achievable within the project period, and also aligned with the purposes of the grant program. Okay. And then the second one is the feasibility of the management plan to achieve project objectives and goals on time and within budget, including clearly defined responsibilities, timelines, and milestones for accomplishing project tasks. And I think, if I were to point anything out in that second one in particular, the key word that I think really sort of resonates is the feasibility, right? And so it's important to demonstrate an ambitious plan, but also we want to see it's something that can feasibly be administered within the 3-year performance period for this grant. And then finally, we have adequacy of resources, which is worth 30 points. And there are 3 subfactors, each of which is worth 10 points, up to 10 points. And so the adequacy of support for the project, including facilities, equipment, supplies, and other resources from the applicant or the lead applicant organization is the first subfactor. And then the second subfactor speaks to the extent to which the costs are reasonable in relation to the number of persons to be served, the depth and intensity of services, and the anticipated results and benefits. Okay, and then 3 is the extent to which there's a plan to incorporate the project purposes, activities, or benefits into the ongoing work of the applicant beyond the end of the project period. So a couple of things that I'll just kind of point out here. First, if you're looking at the second bullet there, the extent to which the costs are reasonable. We talked a little bit about that before when we were going through the EED, budget worksheet template. And, really it's this idea of the cost being reasonable, right? The costs aren't inflated. They're not padded. They really sort of accurately reflect what is the amount of funding necessary to implement this project. What are the precise number of staff, persons who would be necessary to do this work? What is the sort of depth and the intensity of services, right? And the anticipated results and benefits, right? And do the costs sort of match up to what those anticipated results and benefits would be? And then when you look at that third budget, we talk about adequacy of resources. A lot of times, what we're trying to sort of tease out is the extent to which the applicant, right, or the sort of applicant entity, the organization, has the ability and has the available funding and resources to be able to do this work and continue this work, at least continue the parts of this work that are working after the federal funding ends, right? And so the idea here is that we want to see the extent to which the applicant has a plan to incorporate aspects of this work into their ongoing regular activities. And so that's an important part of what the peer reviewers will be examining and looking at when they take a look at the adequacy of resources described within your applications. Next slide, please. All right, so just sort of showing a little summary overview of how the applications will be scored. Again, quality of the project design, 30 points, significance, 20 points, quality of the management plan is worth up to 20 points, and then adequacy of resources also up to 20 points. And so that will total a maximum of 100 points. And then there is a competitive preference priority that we haven't discussed yet, which is also worth 10 points. For a maximum of 110 points for each application. Let's go to the next slide, please. So let's talk really quickly about the priorities for this competition. And so the American History and Civics Seminars grant program has one absolute priority, and that absolute priority is seminars for educators or students on American history and civics in honor of the semi-quincentennial of the United States of America. Okay? Straightforward, cut and dry. We're going to break it down a little bit. And so really under this priority, we are really, and this language is pulled right from the NIA, we're providing funding to projects that design and implement innovative or new and existing evidence-based approaches to seminars for educators or students specifically focused on American history and civics. And these projects will directly commemorate the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States. And so these seminars will, study the American political tradition, ideas, traditions, institutions, texts that are essential to American constitutional government and the American heritage. With a focus on the first principles of the founding, their inclusion in the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, as well as their development over time. So a lot of room for applicants to really sort of come up with instructional models and really I think pretty exciting opportunities to really teach about the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States and really kind of dig into ideas about what really makes this country the country that it is. And so let me talk a little bit now about the competitive preference priority. And so the competitive preference priority is civic institutes at institutions of higher education. And so this one is either 0 points or 10 points. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like momentarily, but bear in mind that competitive preference priorities are optional, and not every applicant is required to address the competitive preference priority in order to submit an application and have it reviewed. All right, next slide, please. All right, so under this priority, under the competitive preference priority, we will provide funding to applicants from institutions of higher education that have established independent academic units dedicated to civic thought, constitutional studies, American history, leadership, and economic liberty. And so these institutes should demonstrate a sustained commitment to robust civil discourse, the liberal arts, and the study of American history and politics through primary documents. All right, next slide, please. And so just a little bit of additional information here. This competition does not require cost sharing or matching. We talked about that a little bit when I was walking through the EED budget worksheet. In accordance with Section 2301 of the ESEA, funds made under this program, funds made available under this program may be used to supplement, but not to supplant other non-federal funds that would otherwise be expended to carry out activities under this program. And essentially what that means is that these funds can be used to add to or to support work that's already been ongoing, but they can't take over. They can't be used solely as a fund for work that's already existed under this project or work that's been happening within the entity. Indirect cost rate information is that this program uses a training indirect cost rate, which basically limits indirect cost reimbursement to an entity's actual indirect costs. And so there is a 8% of a limitation of modified total direct cost base, or whichever amount is less. So either the negotiated rate or 8%. And we will review indirect costs as part of the budget review that we complete prior to making awards for this competition. And so if you're interested in finding additional information about indirect costs, we do direct you to 34 CFR 75.562. There's a link here, and you'll also find a link to that in the NIA as well. All right. And then just a couple of really quick points as well. Administrative cost limitation. This program doesn't include any program-specific limitation or on administrative expenses. As far as sub-grantees, it's a question that we get often. Grantees under this competition are not permitted to make sub-awards. Okay, that's not to say that partnerships can happen, but they cannot be sort of maintained as sub-grants. That's not something that's permissible under this program. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to talk really briefly about performance reporting. And so to that, I'll say successful applicants will be required to submit an APR, an annual performance report, during each year of the project, as well as a final performance report at the end of the project. And these reports essentially demonstrate the progress that the grantee is making in meeting approved project objectives across all years of the grant. And so the APR and the FPR contain the following information. They'll include detailed financial information, so budget sheets, budget summaries, and budget narratives. They'll provide information as well on the Government Performance and Results Act, GEPRA, which includes the program performance measures I'll talk about in a moment, as well as project-specific performance measures that each of you will design into your project, which essentially indicates whether or not your project is being successful or not. And so let's talk really quickly about the GEPRA performance measure. And so for each year of the project, grantees are required to meet the following GEPRA performance measure. And that performance measure is the percentage of participants who demonstrate through pre and post assessments an increased understanding of American history, civics, and government, as well as geography. And so there's only one GEPRA measure, one Department of Education performance measure for this program, and it is basically to demonstrate that that through participation in the seminars, there is there's basically growth, from pre and post assessments. And so what we'll ask each applicant to do in their application is to demonstrate or to provide performance targets. And then in the annual performance report, we will be, obviously assessing the extent to which the applicant or which the grantee is meeting those annual performance targets on this GEPRA performance measure. Next slide, please. And then, as I mentioned before, there are also project-specific measures. And so while there's only one GEPRA measure, generally speaking, grantees have multiple project-specific measures, and they can look very different from the GEPRA measure because they're the things that are really specific and important to the entity, that is to the grantee. And so in addition to reporting on the program's GEPRA measures, we require successful applicants to also identify what their annual performance information and in the progress toward meeting project-specific measures. And so your application should show a list of the project-specific measures. Okay, and again, these are measures that are really specific to and important to whether it's your organization or whether to the students that you're serving, or whether it's to the educators that are participating in these seminars. We want to also see the performance targets for each measure during each year of the project. And then obviously we want to be able to see a plan for how that performance data will be collected and the feasibility of meeting those performance targets. Okay. All right. So we are at the point in the webinar now where you're probably tired of hearing me speak for the last 55 minutes. Happy now to turn it over to you all for questions. I just want to take a moment to thank the American History and Civics team, who's been just furiously firing off responses to questions in the chat. But I am going to ask a member of the team to come off mute and let me know if there are any questions that are lingering that haven't been answered yet.
Yes, we do have a couple.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, do we require a PI or an external evaluator for this grant?
We do not.
Also, does the evidence have to be out of the Wadsworth clearinghouse?
It does not. So the evidence threshold for this grant is demonstrates a rationale. And so what that essentially means, there's a definition for it in the NIA. And essentially what that's asking for is that there is, give me 1 second, sorry. What we're saying is that, it should be based on, there should be a logic model or conceptual framework that essentially serves as the basis for the project activities and the strategies that are outlined in the proposal.
Is there a limit page-wise in regards to any kind of the budget narrative outside of the program, the project narrative? In addition,
in the budget narrative?
Yes, page-wise.
Got it. We do not have a specified page limit or character limit for the budget narrative, no.
And a lot of people have been asking about the competitive preference priority and how can the primary applicant be a nonprofit that partners with an institute of higher education, or do they have to do a group application? How do they qualify for that?
Yeah, that would be done through that would have to be done through a group application, right? So we have I think we talked about that a little bit earlier, and the procedures for submitting a group application are identified in the NIA, also with a link to where to find that in the CFR. Felicia, I see you're coming off mute. Did you want to say something about that?
Yes, and I saw, thank you, Michelle. I saw 1 or 2 questions that talked about in partnership with. So if you have 2 applicants that are applying to the grant and the non-for-profit or other organization is applying as the lead entity, they would not, in partnership with an Institute of Higher Education, IHE, they would not be entitled to, as the eligible entity is not the lead applicant.
Right. But if they submitted as part of a group application following those procedures, they would be eligible.
A consortium, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Other questions? I see a pretty active chat, so I'll give time.
There's some questions about the funding source of this grant, which we talked about already, I believe, where it's funded out of, and what reassurances do we have that this grant will be awarded? And then
can we do one at a time?
Yes.
All right. I'll answer that last one really quickly, the assurances. And so I think the answer to that is no different than it would be in any circumstance when we do a competition. We make awards based on the funding that's available at the time we're making the awards. And so we, I think, have announced in the NIA and today and in the webinar that we have approximately $14.2 million that are available for awards to be made. And so given the, reality of the existence of that funding, we intend to make awards based on that. And you had that was kind of stacked. You had a few additional questions stacked in that one, Michelle.
I think that the other thing was about funding source, like where it was coming from, which was the statute that you had already read out.
It's appropriated funding specifically for this competition.
Can the seminars be for teachers and students? It says or, but can we assume that and is fine as well?
I would think so, yes.
What information is expected for the letter of intent? Is there a page limit?
Yeah, for the letter of intent, there's no page limit, but it should be really brief. And it really, the only requirement is that you're sending it to American History and Civics at ed.gov. And it should just include, obviously, the name of the sender, the name of the organization, and I think, and I'm going off memory, but I think we just said it should say intent to apply in the subject line.
Is it correct that being an IHE is not sufficient to earn the CPP points? The IHE has to have an independent civic institute associated with it. It can't be a Department of Education or History.
That's correct.
Must our development of evidence-based approaches include American history, civics, government, and geography, or just at least one of the three?
I'm sorry, can you read that again?
The evidence-based approaches, do they have to include all of American history, civics, government, and geography, or just one of those?
It can just be one of those or a combination thereof.
Is there a template for resumes?
No, it's just submit them as you have them.
The NIA and the instructions say the narrative is recommended to be 50 pages. Should it be 40?
If it's in the NIA, it should be 50.
And that's the maximum.
The NIA is the official record. So if it says 50 in the NIA, then that's the number that we'll honor.
Given the CPP, is it realistic that any organization can win that is not one of these state-created civics institutes?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that.
Given the competitive preference priority, is it realistic that any organization can receive an award that is not one of the IHEs with civic institutes?
Yeah, I think to the question, to the response earlier, the pathway for that would be through a group application. The process, for which is outlined in the NIA.
How does the required demonstrated experience factor into scoring?
Say that one more time, sorry.
How does the required demonstrated experience factor into scoring?
So it's the demonstrated experience is to help us to determine eligibility. And so we will be, when applications are received, we do a screening to ensure that the applicant meets the absolute priority, right? And so we are determining the extent to which applicants, before the application is even provided to peer reviewers to review, external peer reviewers to review, we're determining whether or not the applicant, does meet that have that demonstration of expertise and experience. And so that part will be conducted internally. As far as the scoring is concerned, scoring of applications is determined by the extent to which applicants meet the selection criteria. Okay, and so there are the 4 selection criteria that I kind of walk through, and the subfactors for each one. And so, with respect to how the points are distributed, they are distributed based on the extent to which the applicant is responding to the absolute priority in relation to those selection criteria. I hope that's clear.
Does the target audience need to be U.S. citizens, or can it be foreigners, J1 visa holders as well?
I don't know that I understand the full context of that question.
I don't either.
I would invite.
It's K-12 students or teachers, right?
Yes, it is. Oh, got it. So participants as in like the audience as in participants of the seminars? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I would assume that's what they're referencing.
Yeah, I don't know that I know explicitly the answer to that question, and I think I have a leaning, but that might be one that we would have to come back to you with response.
How many applicants do you typically receive for these types of grants?
So historically, this program has received very few applicants. The last competition, which was in 2023, there was a sizable increase in the amount of funding available for applications. So we received 65 applications for that one. Prior to that, I think we were not getting more than 20 applications. So I would imagine that this competition, the number of applications will probably land closer to the 2023 competition than in previous competitions. So closer to 65 is what I'm expecting.
Are we permitted to offer training stipends to participants in the seminar program?
Did you say, are we committed to?
Permitted.
Permitted. Yes. It's common, actually.
Seminars can provide direct services to K-12 teachers or students that are eligible. There's no programming or for college or graduate students, correct?
Correct.
Is the grant institutionally limited? It's the 3 application types, the applicant types that we talked about earlier, institutes of higher education, for-profits, and nonprofits, correct?
That is correct. But let's not forget about the demonstration of expertise.
And the demonstration of expertise, absolutely. And you need to answer the absolute priority.
That is correct.
I'm going back up. Again, page limit for the appendices, I don't believe there is one.
There is not.
Can one organization submit multiple applications if we have two different very good ideas?
Yes. Yeah, there's no limitation there. And that's
And
also common.
Yeah. Not, I think Orman answered this, but just to clarify, nonprofits do not have to have an Institute of Higher Education partner, but scoring is based on the selection criteria and the competitive preference priority, and the 10 points are for institutes of higher education with a civic institute. Correct?
That's correct. That is correct.
Do we provide a year, in addition to the year one budget, a 3-year or 5-year budget?
A 3-year, I'm sorry?
You need to provide a budget for all 3 years, correct?
For
An
all
estimate?
3 years, correct.
The demonstrated experience in the development of evidence-based approaches with the, is that not, does that include all instructional approaches or just history and civics and geography?
That includes, so that's all the various approaches. So if a project is focused on history, then obviously they should be able to demonstrate expertise in that area. If it's civics, that area. Government, that area. If it's a combination thereof, they should be able to demonstrate expertise in each of the areas that they're addressing in their project.
Considering the award notification dates, the grant is scheduled to be awarded or notified of award September 30th. The grant starts October 1st, correct? Of 2025?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
What is the smallest dollar amount that you will consider? There is no limit, correct?
Yeah, there's no limit. We don't have I mean, the project needs to be viable. So the dollar amount needs to be able to reflect that a project can be supported under it. So if the amount seems too small to be viable for the work, then there probably would need to be a really good explanation in the project narrative, not to give any suggestions as to why they feel that's the correct amount of funding. So I can't provide a dollar value. That's too little. But I just would ask prospective applicants to keep that into consideration, that we have an expression, funds equal activities, right? And so if you have a really ambitious project design, but can't show us the funding to support that design or that proposed design, then that's going to provide information for us in and of itself to help us understand the viability of the project.
And I would jump in here to say that is also part of the peer review process.
Yeah.
And the selection criteria, looking at adequacy of resources.
Yeah.
If you're notified of the award in September, implementation in October is realistic, but it doesn't have to mean that you're conducting seminars October 1st. It means correct. That you're ramping up and you're planning your activities during that period of time. They have to.
That's correct. Yeah, it's the start of the project period. So, with the understanding that throughout the first year of the project, there are things happening, and there are very specific things that are happening during the first year of any grant project. And so, as we begin the monitoring process, we would want to see that those things are occurring in the first year. But it doesn't necessarily mean that, seminars are happening on day one or being delivered on day one, because there obviously would have to be a very realistic ramp up, time for the project.
And I will also add here, Armand, that we would also not underscore everything that Armand has just stated. We would also want to emphasize that this program does not come with a planning year. you are opening the grant on October 1st as an implementation year. So the intent and expectation is that you have a plan to basically start the implementation of your project.
Can you use grant funds to hire a program evaluation service?
Yes, absolutely.
And would you consider a proposal that includes digitization of records alongside a seminar?
I'm sorry, you chopped up a little bit like midway through.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I'm probably away from my microphone. Okay. Would you consider a proposal that includes digitization of records alongside of a seminar?
So let me just, so a little bit about the review process. So as I mentioned before, these applications are reviewed by external peer reviewers with subject matter expertise related to this work. We will do a review and analysis to ensure that the absolute priority is addressed. And as long as we can ascertain that the absolute priority is addressed, we will send those applications to be examined and reviewed by those external peer reviewers. Okay. And so that is sort of just to kind of give you, in a nutshell, what that process looks like. Those peer reviewers are going to score the application based on the selection criteria, right? So the extent to which they feel that they believe that or see that the selection criteria are being addressed in the application proposal is sort of the marker that they'll be using to assign points to the various selection criteria. I hope that's, it's kind of a carefully worded response intended to sort of separate our office, right, the Effective Educator Development Division, the American History and Civics program, from the peer review that's going to happen. And so I expect that we will see applications that have a wide variety of different formats and sort of modalities. But I just want to kind of make it clear that the peer reviewers will be scoring those applications based on what they're based on what they're seeing in relation to the selection criteria.
Someone wants to know who makes up the peer review. We have external peer reviewers that
external peer reviewers, subject matter expertise, people with subject matter expertise.
And do we have a definition for seminar?
I'm gonna toss that one to you, Venetia. I will say there is not a regulated definition of seminar in the NIA. Actually, I'll let you weigh in, Venetia.
Oh, correct. Correct. We don't have an established definition of seminars within the scope of a regulatory. We are following the definition in the program statute that speaks to seminars as it pertains to the program in the regulations.
Yep.
Will there be another round if you are not chosen this round?
What?
I assume they're talking about either funding down the slate or a second competition.
So what I would say is to that is sort of similar to the answer earlier around funding. Every award that we make is based on a result of the availability of funding. So, I can't predict the future, in terms of what the funding situation will be like. I'll just say that generally what happens is when there's funding available, we have decisions to make as to whether we're making new awards or funding existing awards, and so we'll have to make decisions like that depending on what the funding picture looks like. But it's kind of hard to answer that question right now because we never have insight at this time of the year as to what the next year is going to look like from a funding perspective.
Does a single session with students qualify as a seminar, or does it need to be a long-term course of study?
Yeah, so go ahead, Venetia. Did you want
to? Due to the fact that seminar has been left pretty open
Yeah.
as far as how it is being defined. So that would be something that would be formed and talked about within the construct of the project application, and how the applicant is sort of painting the picture of the project that they're implementing or planning to implement.
Yeah, took the words right from me. There's it's sort of silent, on what the scope of the seminar should be. So I think applicants should be encouraged to design an experience that they feel is high value and high quality, and meets obviously the absolute priority and the intent and spirit of the competition, but also meets the needs of the constituents and stakeholders that they're setting out to serve.
One of the Michelle, before you go to the next one of the things that I just want to add here, and this gets a couple of questions. We are absolutely purveyors of your great work and your visionary thinking. Applications come to us and are peer reviewed external to the Department of Education staff for a reason. We have expert peer reviewers that are bringing expertise and understanding about the work within the field nationally. And so as you start putting these projects together, along with your rationale and your logic models, you will tell a story of what you are expecting to do and what you anticipate will happen as it pertains to the benefit to students and educators. That construct will drive what you are envisioning your seminars to look like, what the impact of it will be after the implementation to benefit. And that is how we will look at the sort of quantifying, I guess, of what these seminars mean across each applicant.
I think that answers a couple of the other questions. Just
Any others?
I linked in the thank you, Nikki, you already answered that. About there's exemplar applications from previous grant awardees. Now this is a new grant project, so the selection criteria are slightly different. The competitive preference priorities are different, but it will give you an example of what a grant application looks like from the national activities or the academies side. You can look online for those, and Nikki posted the link for you.
Yep.
And we would recommend that, and Michelle's point is absolutely 100%. This is a new competition, a new program. However, things such as the previous question around logic models, theory of change, how to address some of those standing requirements are really you really benefit from taking a look at past award winners and just how folks in the field, your peers and your colleagues have addressed some of these competitive requirements. Just always helps to do your research.
Again, with the competitive preference priority, partnering with an institute of education, with a civic institute, that's just one of the competitive preference priorities. It's not better or worse. It's just that there is an eligible 10 points for institutes of higher education with independent civic institutes. It's not a better or worse thing. It's just the points that are available through the competitive preference priority. Correct?
Can you, I'm sorry, can you read the question actually? Because I
Sure. Do you recommend we partner with the Institute of Higher Education? Is it better that we do?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So to your point, it's not. I mean, better. I don't want to get into a better or worse proposition, but I will say in order to receive the points, I think the CPP, the competitive preference priority, is fairly clear on what that would look like, and where maybe there's some lack of clarity is sort of what we discussed before about the if you want to receive those additional points and you are not situated at an institution of higher education that has sort of the civic center sort of built in, you want to make sure that you are applying as part of a group application with another entity that does meet that standard. So I don't want to say whether it's better or worse. I'll let you all make your own sort of judgments on that. But in order to to receive those points, you would either have to be situated or represent an organization that does meet that threshold, or you would have to apply as part of a group application with another organization that does.
And there are a few questions about that kind of institute. Do you get the points if the institute is not part of the application and it just exists at the same institute of higher education?
You will not be entitled to the competitive preference points unless you yourself are as the fiscal responsible agent of the grant. You have to meet the criteria of the competitive priority, unless you are coming in as part of a group, unless you are part of a group structure. Other than that, the competitive priority points is only issued to the fiscal authorized agent of the grant that meets the criteria of the competitive priority points.
Similarly, how do you define independent in regards to independent civic institute? What is it independent from? Does it mean that it's not limited to a single department or academic unit, or can it be a single department or academic unit? What does that look like?
I think we would probably need to. I do not personally have a definition for how independent is used in that context, so I think that might be one that we have to take back and get a response and follow up. And for any questions, and I think we're capturing notes of questions that we need to follow up on, and so we will get answers to those questions, and we will provide a written response at the competition website at www.ed.gov to make sure that you all have answers to to these questions. We want to make sure that everybody who's interested in knowing the answers to these questions has access to them. Okay. Maybe we can take like one or two more before we wrap up. Can you go back, Joshua, please? One or two more questions. I think I saw a couple show up in the chat.
They're of a similar vein.
Mm-hmm.
And again, someone asked, can you win a grant without competitive preference priority points?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. All right. Well, let's go ahead and close out. And I would just encourage, if there are questions or if you didn't feel comfortable posting your question, I would just ask you to make sure you send it to American History and Civics at ed.gov. We are monitoring that email address pretty closely, and we're turning around responses pretty rapidly. So if you do have a question, or if you're like me and you attend a seminar or webinar and something pops in your head 5 minutes after everyone jumps off, feel free to send an email there, and we will follow up with you with responses in a timely manner. We always say within 24 hours, but I think we're far far beating that that turnaround time. So with that, let's go ahead to the next. Oh, that email address is American History and Civics at ed.gov. You can see it on your screen there. Just a couple of quick notes before we wrap up. Here's some of the resources you should be paying attention. I'm sure that everyone has access to these resources, but obviously make sure you read through the NIA. It's filled with information, obviously, to help support ensuring that you have a full and complete, understanding of this competition, this program, what the intent is, and how you can address the priorities as well as the selection criteria. That is going to be your official record for this competition. So I encourage you to read that thing from cover to cover and just make sure that you have, a firm understanding of what's there. The application instructions package is found in grants.gov, and so that's where you'll find the application instructions. You'll also find, the additional information such as the forms, the various parts of the application, the abstract form, the narrative form, the budget worksheet, etc., and the other attachments form. So you'll find all that information in grants.gov. And then, of course, the pre-application webinar recording and slides, we will provide that information on the web page for American History and Civics national activities on the ed.gov website. So if you search for this opportunity on the ed.gov website, you will find that information, and we will try to, I think within 72 hours, we should be able to have that information up on the website. And then finally, the EED budget narrative template. We spent a little bit of time talking about that earlier. Just want to make sure that you all have that information. You will find that document linked on the web page of ed.gov and on ed.gov, I should say, and you can download that and you can use that as a sort of a framework for providing your budget summaries, your detailed breakdown, budget breakdown, as well as your budget narratives. And so you will find that information on the ed.gov website on the American History and Civics webpage. And then, of course, if you have questions, as I mentioned before, please do email us at American History and Civics at ed.gov. I think I saw someone in the chat ask if oese.americanhistoryandscivics.gov at ed.gov is the correct email address. And actually, both work. They both point to the same inbox. So whether you type in American History and Civics at ed.gov or oese.americanhistoryandscivics at ed.gov, we will get your email. And we will respond to you, as I said, within 24 hours. But I don't want to overpromise for the team, because I know they've been working hard and the questions have been fast and furious. But they will be responding and turning over those questions as quickly as they possibly can. And I don't remember, was there another slide, Joshua? Yep. So mentioned before about the recording and the PDF of the slides. Remember, the closing date is July 23rd, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. But if I know the people, and I've been looking through the list of people on this call, and I know there's some people that have already set their calendars to July 22nd, 2025 at 11:59 to make sure they have an extra 24 hours. So, as I said before, start early, submit early, and you will avoid any challenges, on the back end. Again, we will not review late applications. If you, send us a notification of intent to apply, it helps us tremendously. It helps us to plan for the peer review and to even if it's a week or 2 weeks, it just gives us that initial time to be able to have a sense that a prospective applicant does intend to apply. So that way we can have a better sense of how many peer reviewers we need to assign to application panels and how many panels in general we need to have to review the applications. Again, be sure to submit in grants.gov. Don't send me an email with your application PDF. Make sure that you're submitting in grants.gov, and also make sure that you get verification that your application was received. And then finally, if you have any questions, the help desk is for grants.gov is 1-800-519-4726. And they will be happy to work with you to resolve any challenges or issues that you have. And with that, we want to say thank you for spending the afternoon with us. I apologize for going about 4 minutes over, but we wanted to make sure that we, were able to answer as many questions as possible today. Really, really appreciate all of you for being here with us today, and hoping that you all apply for this wonderful opportunity. So,